All right, welcome back. In case you're just joining us, it's time for our conversations right now. Hamzat Lawal, who is the Chief Executive Officer at Connected Development, founder, Follow the Money, is joining me right now at the table. Hamzat, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
How are you today?
I'm fine. And you?
I'm good.
How was the long break?
It was fine.
Yeah, I can
In fact,
imagine.
it was as if it shouldn't end.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
You know, sometimes when you have breaks like this, just to like reset.
Yeah, reflect, yes.
Reflect.
Yes.
Do all sorts that you couldn't.
And spend time with family.
Yes,
yeah?
and in fact, I think that's the basic thing.
Yeah.
Spending time with family, but because I try to do that with
nice.
This holiday break. So welcome to the show.
Thank you.
You know, quite a whole lot, even this past few days, despite the holiday and all of that. The president signed a minimum wage bill into law last Thursday, April 18, according to Senator Itai Nang, who is an advisor to the president. So much to talk about. But let me start on this note, actually. You are the founder, Follow the Money. Where has your trail, where has it taken you to so far in terms of following the money? That's one. The second question is, over this holiday break, what were the issues for you that you really looked at? Because we were just saying during the break, in fact, sometimes when I'm going to work in the morning, I tell my young son, despite he doesn't really understand what I'm saying, I'm like, okay, mommy is going to talk about Nigeria's issues again today. You know, he will just be looking at me. You know, Nigerian issues they don't exhaust. They are not exhausted. What were the issues for you? So I've asked you two questions. Yeah.
So yes, for Follow the Money, since 2012 to date, for us, it's about impact-driven campaign and taking those voices at the grassroots, because a lot of people actually don't have access to social media or smartphones. A lot of people still don't have televisions in their household, but how can we take information to them? But most importantly, also take their issues and bring them to the front burner. So for us, we've worked in the 36 states and the FCT, and now Follow the Money is in Kenya, the Gambia, Malawi, Liberia, and it's that Pan-African movement that is mobilizing citizens. We have over 5,000 dedicated members on our platform, ifollowthemoney.org, and we've tracked in Nigeria over $10 billion and impacted directly over 2 million lives. And then going back to your questions around what were the issues for me, I'm glad you actually asked that. So elder statesman Bola Tinubu talked about budget padding. So he brought that again to the front burner and accusing the leadership of the National Assembly, and Senator Saraki, that's the Senate President, also reacted, asking for evidence for the elder statesman to bring evidence on the padding, and this also bring about the Nigerian's budget and the entire process. So the value chain, how do we come about our proposed budget? How are citizens engaging in that value chain? But most importantly, are this budget open and easily accessible? Oh yes, at the federal level, the budget is open. I know that the Senate President have also released a breakdown of the National Assembly budget, but we don't have specific. For instance, there's still that debate, how much are lawmakers earning? And in Nigeria, and you look at the country that over 80 million people are poor, but in the world, Nigeria's lawmakers are actually the highest paid. And then let's flip that to the minimum wage conversation. You're paying 30,000 naira moving forward now to the engine room, because the workforce is the engine room of every nation. You're paying them 30,000. But then look at the political leaders and the elites. What are their take-home pay? So for us, it's about engaging policy and decision-making and bringing these issues to the front burner. And hopefully, because, Nancy, you and I will live here. I'm sure you can afford to live in the US or in Canada, that is always trending now and then. And I can afford to want to relocate out of Nigeria, but we live here. But what is the tomorrow of here, which is Nigeria? And I'm sure your son would want to continue from where her mother has stopped, or want to even take that challenge and be that change, or engage and bring more solutions to the table. But there will be no here. And when I say here, there will be no Nigeria if we don't fix it before our kids grow up.
You know, I'm always so bothered about that. In fact, I've been so disturbed. Some of my followers on Twitter will be like, no, Nancy, don't say you're miserable because you don't look miserable. And sometimes I tell them appearance could be very deceptive, because looking at the way Nigeria is, the way we are treading, it's not encouraging at all. It makes me miserable. I'm depressed when I look at the issues of the country, especially economic issues. And it's not just even about party lines, because we've been saying this like forever. It's not even about the Buhari's administration.
No.
I remember since when I started the business show and all of that, it's more than a decade now that I've been on this game. And I've been saying the same thing for more than 10 years, for, you know, for God knows how long. And nothing really has changed. If you look at this minimum wage right now, in 2011, the last minimum wage, 18,000 naira, was reviewed during President Jonathan. That was worth about 108 US dollars. Now the 30,000 naira minimum wage is $83. So in real terms, a Nigerian was better in 2011 than now. Even at that time, people were like us were telling the PDP administration, you were not doing well, you needed to do better. We're also telling the APC government right now, you are not doing fantastically well. You need to do better because Nigerians are impoverished. My reporter went to Wuse Market, see what he brought back. In fact, I was at the market before the Easter, just before the Easter break, and people were just like complaining to me. Ah, Nancy, work the same Wuse Market. Nancy, you come market today, see what's in the happen, nothing there. You know, I'm so inundated with all of this happening. That's on one side. The other side also, which for me was, I reflected over the Easter break, was the insecurity situation in the country. For those that have been watching at least in the last 2 weeks or so, I've been hampering on this insecurity. For me, even putting on TV or listening to radio now is something difficult, or even checking out my phone, something difficult for me to do, because I would always see he kill, he die. Someone die, he kidnap. And now the new word into our lexicon is banditry. And it's really so sad.
Yes.
At what point are we deteriorating as Nigerians?
It is depressing, Nancy, and I would try not to cry because I believe
I can
crying,
see, because I can see that it's like,
yeah, it's really depressing.
Yes,
you
I
know,
can see the tears are already swelling.
because you see, for us that are enlightened and we're aware about the economic situation and the realities on the ground, and when I say on the ground, at the grassroots, in the marketplace, in the workforce, it's depressing. And I can understand the pressure that we carry, because people that are poor, that are below $1 a day, that their thinking is not about what hospital or what school my kids will go to. They're thinking it's about their next meal. And for us who are enlightened, it keeps us depressed, and it keeps us, I think also it's an opportunity for us, because the fact that we know, it means that we have to use that, our voice, even if it's as little as what it is today, because again, there's deliberate clampdown on activists and journalists just to, you know, cage us so that we don't talk about these issues. But we must, as a country, for us to move forward, we must heal. We must always open our doors to debate and accept constructive criticism as government, as private sector, as civil society, and as media. And for me, as much as we want to develop, Nancy, if we don't tackle the issue of insecurity, we can't make headways. Our foreign direct investment will trickle down because these foreign investors, first, they want to ensure that their lives are guaranteed. And what is the cost of an average life of a Nigerian?
I don't know if there's any price to it anymore.
My dear, look at just the last weekend. People who came to Nigeria, to Kaduna for tourism, were killed in Kajuri Castle. So it tells you that income that we should generate that would help us increase our GDP in the tourism sector would also go down, because we're not providing protection for lives and properties. So for me, I believe that government have a unique role to play. I know that if we want to talk about security, we might exhaust our time and not even talk about the minimum wage. But as much as we call on government, even we as citizens have a role to play. How are we ensuring that we're gathering intelligence? Because now technology plays a huge role. You saw what happened, the robbery that happened in Dubai. In less than 10 minutes, the culprits were apprehended. Why? Because they integrated technology. How are we as a country integrating technology? And one thing we fail to realize is we'll create jobs and value if you integrate technology. Today, your show it's being live streamed on YouTube. It is being live streamed on Twitter. So what it means is you're also reaching millions of viewers beyond the mainstream TV. So that is innovation. How can we ensure government embrace innovation and technology so we can scale? Because our population is increasing. So what this tells you is there will be pressure on our limited resources. both infrastructure-wise, both security-wise, and human capacity development index-wise. So if we don't prepare, there will be no future that we can call home, which is Nigeria.
You know, I just needed to chip that in because for me, part of the reflection over the Easter break was the type of things that we read, that we're experiencing in the country, which we shouldn't take for granted, which I think is an emergency case in the country. And for leaders at every strata should take this seriously. One of my guests that is late now, late Shadrach Madlon, and that I miss him so much.
God bless his soul.
You know, so much. Used to say, when he used to come on my show then, he said, Nancy, if it not happen to you or someone would they close to you, go be like saying a firewood. If they happen to, unless it happens to someone close to you or happens to you. And Shadrach also became a victim of what he used to say. He was kidnapped along the Abuja-Kaduna road, and he was, you know, he died as a result of those complications. So we need to see a Nigeria that is good today so that we can ensure that tomorrow is better for our children. And no matter whose ox is God, ours is to say the truth, at least for me. I don't know of anyone else. Now, let's continue the show. You did also point to the fact that foreign direct investment in the country is dropping. Last year's figures, $2.2 billion into the country, dropped by 36%. Our neighbor Ghana was the highest recipient in West Africa in 2018. How do you now relate that to an economy that the president just approved, $83 as minimum wage for its workers? You know, first of all, should labor be hailed? Should labor be commended? That they fought that fight and they won.
Oh yes, we have to commend labor and the leadership of labor for standing their ground. Because if you follow through the negotiations, government didn't want to vouch. Government was insisting on standing their ground. And when I say government, let's not focus on federal government. The governors, the governors forum were saying they cannot meet this new minimum wage demand. It was the state governors that were saying, oh, we even have a deficit in paying salaries. So why would you want to increase? No, please wait. And if you look at it, over the years, you know, the Nigerian Labor Congress have always said increase our minimum wage, because again, inflation is increasing. Things are getting very expensive. Let's go to the market. How much was a bag of rice 5 or 10 years ago? How much is a bag of rice today? Because these are the prices that determine when you take that money home, how would you be able to feed your family? How much is the cost of shelter? That's the basic, because 1 is shelter, 2 you have to clothe and feed, 3 is education, 4 is healthcare. So what is that cost implication today? So we must commend labor for standing their grounds and ensuring that they got the president to sign 30,000 naira minimum wage. But we should not be excited about 30,000. $83.3, Nancy. $83.3 for, let's take an average family of a husband and wife and maybe 2 or 3 kids. With that amount, you have to feed these people, shelter them, clothe them, take them, pay their school fees, and also take them to hospital. Nancy, as much as it's a welcome development, we should not get excited. Again, the market women and the market men and the business community, informal this time, when they hear breaking news, salaries of workers have been increased. Hey! We must also increase the price of goods and services, because our customers they are now enjoying from the national cake. So we must also get a piece of the pie. What this means is we are at the verge of going into inflation if we're not careful. Because if we don't manage the information and the knowledge properly to break it down so that the ordinary Nigeria understands what this 30,000 mean. And when I say what it means, is what it means to an average Nigeria who has a family of 5. If not, next week when you go to the market, the price of rice would increase. And once rice, oil, the basic things, Maggi, goes up, then we now have an inflation at our hands. So we can't afford to have an inflation at the moment. And mind you also, Nancy, the president mentioned that he's planning to increase VAT, value added tax. So what this also means is,
Though FIRS has debunked that.
well,
They said they never said that.
but it is out there. Again, let me reference Bola Tinubu during the colloquium. He mentioned and he begged on behalf of poor people that the federal government should look inwards and not increase tax, value-added tax. Rather, he should focus on the elite who have the yacht and the private jet. So let's assume that, or let's assume that he would not increase VAT. But then again, what is the value of 30,000 when you go to the market, really?
Now, the question also would be, federal workers will be the first recipients of this minimum wage. What are the abilities of the states to pay? Because I think that's where also a bulk of government employees are.
Nancy, the state governors cannot even pay. How many states have paid salaries up to date? There is a deficiency for state governors, even with the Paris Club refund and the special intervention they got from Mr. President. They have not been able to meet paying of workers' salaries.
Why
in
is
some
that
states.
so? Why?
So it tells you the priority of governors. Mind you, they still receive their security vote. They still get their allowances and get all their overhead and recurrent expenditure. But when it comes to the workforce, the engine room in the state, but then mind you also, what are our states generating? What is their capacity to generate, and what are they generating? What is the internal mechanism for states to generate revenue? Without federal government allocation, some states would not seek to exist. Some states, governors and the executive just fold their arms and wait for monthly allocation. They just send their commissioner for finance and the accountant general to Abuja to sit and sign documents and get a lot. Most of our state governors, they don't look at, so what is it that we can do to generate resources? And I will take you, let's travel 2 hours away from Abuja. Let's go to Kogi State, for instance. Kogi State is a confluence state whereby I call it the connector. For you to go south or west, you must pass through Lokoja. How is the governor harnessing that opportunity whereby, one, for every travelers, why can't we ensure that we create, people want to enjoy themselves. So when they park in Lokoja, for instance, what is that thing that entices them that they would want, will attract them that they want to spend their money on? And is there value for that money? Imagine if every vehicle that passed through that state is being taxed on, or there is a tax or some informal incentive where you can generate revenue for it. And what is that thing that would even drive people to want to stop? It's a clean environment. Let's look at the environment itself in Lokoja.
And not even things that are repelling people right now from passing through Lokoja and Okene, which is the insecurity which we talked about earlier on.
So for you to increase revenue, internally generated revenue, you must ensure that you put in place the basic, like the basic of the basic. Again, I think now is an opportunity for state governors to take the bull by the horn and have a conversation with Mr. President so that we can have a bill that allows states to control a valuable percentage of their resources. A lot of our states that have natural resources, call it mindstone, call it crude oil, the gold, the diamonds and whatnot. Because Nigeria is blessed. Why can't we ensure that we put these resources in the hands of our state elected officials? And then government provides oversight, provide regulation, and ensure that they also meet international best practice standard. But then the only issue would be transparency and accountability elements, because some percentage of the oil crude sales still goes to some states in the Niger Delta. And if you look at some of the states in the Niger Delta, let's go to Bayelsa. What is the workforce? What is even the population of Bayelsa or the workforce of Bayelsa? Are they enjoying the dividends of this percentage from the oil sales that goes to the states?
Now, the other question will be, even as we move towards the end of the show, is that by May 29, we're going to see a flurry or a new wave of governors, so to speak, at least in certain states, we'll see new governors. Do you think that will bring in some kind of new thinking? There's a product, there's a new thinking, new product, or good product, new thinking, or so. One of these
Yes.
cars, yeah.
Good thinking, good products.
Yes. Are we going to see that wave of new thinking amongst the governors?
I think that these incoming governors, from the insights we got, some of them are even scared. They're scared because they're coming in to meet dwindle of state resources. They're coming in to see that they're handing over a state to them where they've not paid months of salary, so they have backlog to meet. But I think that these governors have an opportunity, yes, to bring in new thinking and new innovation to integrate technology. For instance, as much as we're saying, when we're talking about the workforce and the minimum wage, let's also look at the output of this workforce. What is the output we're getting from civil servants in Nigeria? What is that output? How are we able to? Because see,
how productive are they?
You understand? Because private
yeah.
sector, when they employ you, they would ensure that even if they're paying you 6-figure or 7-figure salary, at the end of the day, they would ensure that you actually value that 6-figure salary. So what is that output we're getting from our civil service? For me, one exciting part that I enjoy with this new minimum wage is the fact that at least there's that protection of the rights of the labor force. Because before now, a lot of people, as much as we had the 18,000 naira, there's still civil servants that were earning as low as 10,000, earning 6,000. But this law stipulates that you can actually sue government if you're paid below 30,000, which I believe that as much as we expect a lot from the civil servants, we must also ensure that we protect their rights as citizens and as labor workers.
Okay, let's take a few comments before we go. Daniel on Twitter said, listening to your show, please ask Follow the Money how is following state allocations, especially Kogi state government that have not been paying staff salaries.
Nancy, so we wrote to the 36 state governors to give us breakdown, because again we must commend the federal government as the presidency. They released a breakdown of how much they provided as intervention and how much they provided as Paris Club refund. No executive governor responded except that of one of these Niger Delta states, I can't even remember, River State, responded and gave us details of how they would spend, but did not provide a costed work plan. So and for me, you can't follow the money if you don't have information. Because access to data, publicly available data, would now enforce and enhance how you track government expenditure. And as much as we're now focused on subnational government, democracy itself, it's about the people. It's about citizens. So how are citizens holding governors accountable? Because if you don't demand, there will be no supply. So that's the equilibrium about the democracy.
Hilary says, for one, not all states are viable enough to pay the new minimum wage, and the negative effect of the triple down would impact negatively on the economy. Lastly, Tweet of God says, nice analysis you're doing on the show. Keep it up. Thank you, Tweet of God, and keep watching. I want to say thank you very much, Hamzat, for coming on the show. At least for speaking your mind, and let's see what happens from here. But we must also say the minimum wage is supposed to be reviewed every 5 years.
Oh, yes.
This is the minimum wage. Other countries are talking about the living wage. That's another topic for another day.
Well, thank you, Nancy. And let me end by saying that I think we also need to review how much we pay our lawmakers and executive. I think we need to review it downwards, because we can't be paying 30,000 naira to the powerhouse of the economy.
And the ones that review it themselves.
Well,
the power is in their hands.
This is where
Let's see what the
citizens
9th
would
Assembly
call.
will do. Anyway, that's the much we can take on today's edition of the program. Many thanks for joining us. I've been speaking with Hamzat Lawal, the founder of Follow the Money, CEO Connected Development. We've been looking at the issues around minimum wage, but that's not where the discussion will end, actually, because on the show, we come to you every weekday on this channel, so you can also keep a date with us tomorrow and other days of the week as we continue to follow the money, not, because I'm following the money too, yes.